Virginia began its story in chains, but freedom evolved. It became the birthplace of a nation, the likes of which the world has never seen. 250 years later, we celebrate Virginia's legacy and examine its history through the lens.
Hello, welcome to History Through the Lens. Glad to have you with us today. I'm Tom Schaad. Along with our special guest today, we have Cheryl Wilson from Virginia 250 and also the CEO of Fort Monroe, Scott Martin. There they are. Glad to see you both. And we're talking about a major event that's happening, over the course of a year. 250 years of American
independence.
That's the best way to put it. Because I remember the bicentennial year in 1976 was a huge celebration for a long time. And now Virginia 250 is going to look at the 250th anniversary for a year long, right?
At least beyond, because here in Virginia, it ends in 2031 after the victory at Yorktown.
That's right. And the theme is basically America Made in Virginia.
America Made in Virginia.
What does that mean?
It's a great question. You think about it, your intro correctly mentioned the birthplace of the nation. But think about it, from the founding ideas, the founding ideals, the leading figures, most of what made America happen happened in Virginia. And one of the wonderful things is that we can walk in these same places. And of course, Scott's going to talk to us all about Fort Monroe and what a treasure that is. But we have the power of place, so we can go to the very places that these ideas were formulated and developed and walk in the footsteps of those who came before.
Now, that's a really good point. In Fort Monroe, the reason why we're here with Fort Monroe is because on July 4th, as of this taping, this is before July 4th, the big celebration you're going to have with Virginia 250 happens at Fort Monroe. Why is Fort Monroe the focal point of that celebration?
Well, we're just honored to be a part of that story. And Fort Monroe, as a landscape, I think it's the right word to use, was a site of so much of our nation's story. From the arrival, of course, of Captain Smith to far beyond that, 12,000 years of human settlement of our first Virginians who've been here for a long time. Through the story of African Americans in America and what that means, it's hard to find a landscape, bluntly, in North America where you stitch all of those narratives together, all in one place. And here's the neat thing. They're still owned by the Commonwealth of Virginia. The Commonwealth, all of us own that landscape. And to have that celebration of all of our celebrations there just made sense. And we're so delighted that Cheryl, Senator Locke, and the Commonwealth and Governor have brought the event to Tidewater at Fort Monroe.
It's such a backdrop of the American story. And there's a paradox, too, with Fort Monroe, because it is a beacon of freedom here in Hampton Roads and Virginia and the country. And yet the first enslaved people came here in 1619.
Yeah, and let's even a step further. It's a site of freedom. It's also the site of, we better build a fort because we let the Brits get all the way to D.C. and Baltimore, and we can't do that again. So you have a bunch of stories coming together there, certainly.
And even the one story that I really love about Fort Monroe is Jefferson Davis was held prisoner there, the president of the Confederacy. When I found that out when I first moved here, I said, you got to be kidding me, right here in that room. I mean, talk about that for a moment.
Well, the idea of healing, and what does reconciliation mean? And what does justice mean? Because these are fundamental themes that Cheryl's group's talking about a lot. This is not about fireworks. We're going to have a lot of celebrations. We're going to do a lot of flag waving. But we're also going to talk about the timeless stories of what does freedom mean? What does liberty mean? What does justice mean? What does equality mean? Mm-hmm. These are dialogues that are shaping your newscast every day today.
That's right.
And I'll be so bold as to say, I think the nation is better when Virginians are part of that discussion because of the landscapes that ground us uniquely.
And we talk about healing, we come back stronger, don't we? And America is constantly evolving, isn't it?
Constantly in the process of forming a more perfect,
Perfect union.
union. And that's what the opportunity of the 250th is. Scott's right. Sure, there'll be fireworks. There's actually even going to be drones at Fort Monroe. So you must come. It's free and
They
open
didn't
to
have
the
drones in
public.
1776, did they?
Did they not?
Well, I don't think so.
No, they did not. But the opportunity of the 250th, and I like to say too, Tom, semi-quincentennial. It's a little bit harder
You
than
know, I have not
bicentennial.
said that yet on the air. And I know there's going to come a time when I'm going to have to. And I don't know if I can handle it.
You're going to ace it. You're going to ace it.
You said that very well.
Thank you. But that's what the opportunity of the 250th is. We are all in the process of forming a more perfect union, connecting with our country, and certainly here in Virginia, connecting with our country in the place that made it possible. So that's why Fort Monroe is a perfect landscape for this year's 4th of July celebration.
And we often hear from critics about the sins of our past and all of those things. And when you say form a more perfect union, nobody, no culture, no society in any age, in any history was ever perfect. But the fact that America can keep building towards that more perfect union, as the founders led us, was it Thomas Jefferson who said the Constitution should be torn up every 20 years, every generation. We look at that and we just go, oh my Lord, how could you say such a thing? And yet Jefferson's vision was that different generations will evolve and will take America to the place they want America to be, as long as we remember our basic freedoms and our Bill of Rights, that everybody has those individual freedoms.
And in fact, last year we had a 4th of July program at the state capitol. And on the steps of the state capitol, Speaker Don Scott from Portsmouth stood up and said so eloquently, the men who wrote the words were not perfect, but the words were. And they continue to be, and they continue to fuel every movement for equality, justice, and rights that has ever been and will be.
How so many people, not only those who died for this country, but people who try to come here to be Americans.
Yes.
That's such a powerful statement on what 250 years of freedom means.
Yeah. Yep. And where else are you going to do it but here? You can't fake this. No, all deference to my friends in Des Moines. I'm sure it's a wonderful place.
Or Massachusetts.
It just hits different here. It just does.
Didn't Virginia have, was it 1, 2, I think 4 of the first 5 presidents came here from Virginia?
4 of the first 5 and 8 presidents in total.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, we're going to come back with more because we're talking about history now. And I know Virginia 250 is about trying to educate people. And there's a lot of educating to do. So we'll be back with more on that question after this. I love that water sound because, we're talking about Fort Monroe, which is on the water. I'm Tom Schaad, back with Scott Martin and Cheryl Wilson from Virginia 250. And Scott, of course, is CEO of Fort Monroe, talking about Virginia 250, like a year-long celebration we're having of our 250th anniversary since 1776. And I remember the bicentennial year when I was a little kid. I think we talked about America in every shape and form. Every product on the shelf was red, white, and blue. Yes. Every TV show. It was just such a long conversation about our past. And I wonder what has changed in the last 50 years since then, because it seems that younger people know less and less and less about American history on the whole. And I think there was a number here. What was it? 1/3 could pass the naturalization.
The naturalization.
The citizens test. And that struck me as bizarre. I mean, that was from Institute for Citizens and Scholars, and that was 2019 when that was conducted. So I want to cite that. But that's really something. I remember as a child, we learned a lot about American history way back in the day, long time ago. And why do you think that is? Why do you think we're not teaching our children as as much? Either one of you can take that question.
Oh my gosh, yeah, let's get right into education policy. Let's
Yeah.
let's start
With
riveting
American
stuff.
history, and how important is that?
You know, it's interesting. I think, I've got enough gray hairs now to say it. I think
You have gray hair.
the implementation of technology is providing a lot of disconnects from nature, from history, from each other. And I wonder if the distractions of that are reducing our fundamental time to take, study, know, understand, be vulnerable, all the stuff that really is the core of citizenship, which is knowing why you're here, what sacrifices were made to get you here, what ills are behind you being here, and what's your role to solve it. So I don't always want to point my finger at the evil cell phone, but the speed, the certainly the urgency of the moment, our search for whatever's relevant is whatever I heard last,
Right.
has definitely distracted us from those deeper thoughts and those deeper moments.
And that lets you, the deeper thoughts and deeper moments lets you ponder things longer, lets you put things in perspective, lets you look at things in terms of a timeline and how things were 40, 50, 100 and 200 years ago versus now. You can make comparisons, you can make value judgments, you can do all those things. And I think now all of us get a little bit frazzled with our shorter attention spans and what, technology can do.
Absolutely, but we can also use it to our advantage. And I think that we've chatted about this a little bit, and your viewers know as well. Virginia 250 has a mobile museum experience. It is a full-class, world-class museum in a quad expandable tractor trailer. And it goes to,
Cool.
isn't that cool, right?
That is really cool.
It goes to schools, it goes to historic sites, museums, community centers, fairs. And in it, there's a full representation of the founding of our nation, America made in Virginia, the ideas of the revolution, the revolutionary ideas as well as the Revolutionary War. But at the end, it's the why does it matter, okay? And the why does it matter culminates in a quiz. How well do you know your country? That quiz is a technology adaptation of the 100 questions on the citizenship test.
And it's not an easy test.
It is not. I have a master's degree in this and I got a few wrong. I'm so sorry to admit that on the air, okay? But it's not easy.
No, and I guess it's not supposed to be. But then you look at people coming here for the first time and how they view America. Maybe they've been sold more of a vision because, they hear about the country from outside sources, not from living the experience we live every day. And that might be a different perspective, right? But they want to become Americans, and some will spend all their lives trying to work towards those ends. So there's a deeper appreciation and a love affair, if you will, with what America could be and what America needs to be in its ideal form.
And when you see it through that lens, when you see it through those eyes, you fall in love with it as well.
It chokes me up. Naturalization ceremonies make me,
Just
tear up.
a few weeks ago, I was honored to be the keynote speaker at a naturalization ceremony and could hardly make it through because when you really stop and think and connect, it really, it does choke you up. It moves you, and we hope that it does. We hope that the semi-quincentennial is a time when everyone can reconnect and learn that again. And of course, that's one of the reasons why we are starting the program on the 4th of July with a naturalization ceremony.
That's right. At Fort Monroe.
At Fort Monroe, underneath the Algernon oak, which is one of what we call a witness tree. These are trees that have seen America. This tree predates America. And to do that underneath that tree is biologically connected to the emancipation oak. They're of the same genus. You start stitching that together, and then here's what we're so keen. It's so easy to look back. Looking back is important, but we have more histories to write. And I'm far more interested to see the stories that are going to be written on the site coming forward from this moment that release us to do things we can't even imagine today.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson once said, I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know he's such a great historical figure, but then you look at that and say, part of you says we can't forget our history, whatever you do, because if you forget history, you're doomed to repeat it, especially the negative and ugly sides of it, because everyone has a downside in their history. But the American experience is about what can be, the possibilities. the endless possibilities and the dreamers, and making us a more perfect union, as we say.
Yes. And Tom, if you think about it, history is a series of stories of people making the future better for others. And so the 250th is the what and the when, but the why is the story that continues to evolve.
That really is something. It just makes you think more and more about the promise of America. And there's really no other country that has that in its lexicon, I mean, in its DNA, than what you could be. You could be anything you want. And that sounds idealistic, but so many people have become whatever they wanted to be here in this country.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't want to go full field of dreams, but we're here. You know, what's the great, there's the great, well, James Earl Jones has that great voice, of course. And what does he say? He says like, America is a giant blackboard. It's been erased, written upon, and erased again, and baseball's always there. Well, I would argue Virginia's always been there.
Yeah.
It would be my counter to that. And you can come back to these landscapes and stand on these very grounds. And I have a great fortune in my job, in my position, to watch people come to Fort Monroe, come to the African Landing Memorial Site, come to the Algernon Oak. I have watched people hit their knees. Literally hit their knees. And what you hear all the time is, I had no idea. And so we're saying, well, of course you had no idea. Welcome home, A. And B, that feeling you feel, that is not nostalgia. That is not emotionality. That is not something shallow. What you're feeling is your connection to land. And if you reflect upon that, now we can have a conversation about what it means.
I think we end on that point for this segment. We'll come right back with more about the future of America and what it holds through Virginia 250 and what lessons you want to impart to future generations after this. Welcome back. This is History Through the Lens, and I'm here with Cheryl Wilson from Virginia 250 and Scott Martin, who is CEO of Fort Monroe. We were talking about American history, about Virginia 250, and what it means for the celebration of our nation, where we're going. I think that's this next segment. Where are we going? What's the future? And future generations, if we find that people are not learning about American history, what does that say for the future of the country? I can start with either one of you on this. Let's go with Scott.
Well, I mean, you gotta be grounded to where you're from, and we're a nation of immigrants at the end of the day, which means we're all bringing these messes behind us into one. You know, we're the worst family reunion at once. But, you know, we're doing it right, so we all bring all of our trash with us. But we do have central groundings that we hold to.
Didn't Bill Murray say we were kicked out of every decent country
we are a mess
in the movie Strike?
Yeah,
I love that.
It's a good
I
movie.
love that.
Yeah.
I think there's truth to it, though.
there's truth to it, and then it ties back. In Tidewater, we know this very well. It ties back to a very important thing that defines our region, which is service above self. You don't have to say that here. So many people have sacrificed so much here to live here. But then we have to press that forward. What does it mean going forward? Because we all know it. We feel like we're becoming more of a consumptive nation. We're becoming more transactional. Those are both dead ends. They are fundamentally dead ends. It's when you start giving back with an acknowledgement of where you're from and who you owe, that we can really be building community and sustaining community.
You know, all the founders, for the most part, they were servant leaders.
Absolutely.
They had a high sense of public responsibility.
Absolutely.
Because they were building a new society. And I remember John Adams, who's not a Virginian, but he had talked about, I study war so my future generations can study art, literature, music.
Correct.
Because he realized that we had to win the freedom and we had to serve to make this country what it is.
And, you know, we talk a lot about history in schools and certainly, you know, just there are robust education materials for the 250th. Chief Steve Atkins, the chair of our Tribal Nations Leadership Advisory Council, often says, and he's so correct, learn your history, learn my history, learn our history. But I would say, Tom and Scott too, I look at my own children who are grown, and they'll spend, I think, crazy high amounts on a pair of socks, okay? But it's because that pair of socks gives back. Buy one, they donate one. They find their own ways to make a more perfect union in the ways that feel comfortable to them. And it's not just socks, of course, but it's a good idea, even though it may look different than it did when we were young, just 10 years ago when we were young.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But
I
it's
only
still,
speak for myself, Cheryl. Right?
it still resonates, no matter the age.
You know, it's interesting. You had a really good story, during the break, and I'm debating. Why don't we talk about it now? About Paul Revere's ride. Oneth by land, twoeth by sea, and about how that came to symbolize what you see as the future of Virginia 250.
Yeah, thank you for that. Paul Revere's, the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride was on Friday, April 18th, this past year, 2026. And it was a moment that people in Boston, of course, were recognizing and elsewhere. But about a year or so before that, here in Virginia, we had invited other state planners to convene in Williamsburg through a program we called A Common Cause to All. And we started thinking, actually, it started with one person, one planner in Wisconsin, who said, let's use the moment in the imagery of Paul Revere's ride, one if by land, two if by sea, two lights shining in the windows, and issue an invitation to the nation. The 250th is coming. If you want to be part of this, if you believe in doing our part to form a more perfect union, because what was Paul Revere doing? He was helping his neighbors when you boil it all down.
Yes, he was.
Then shine two lights in your windows. Well, Friday, April 18th came just a few months ago. And we knew here in Virginia, the state capitol was lit up, the governor's mansion. We knew that other state capitals were putting two lights in the windows. We asked people, would you put hashtag 2lightsfortomorrow, that was what the program is called, hashtag 2lightsfortomorrow on social media and send us a picture. Well, as the night evolved, we started seeing on social media every state house, all 50 states, courthouses, historic homes, neighborhoods, farmhouses. My own neighborhood was lit up with two lights, two candles in each window. Then we started seeing it at the Washington Monument. We saw it at the White House. We saw it at the Empire State Building. I'm getting chills again.
It's beautiful.
We saw it at C-SPAN, sitting on the C-SPAN lights. And then the one that took my breath away, we saw it posted from NASA that had two astronauts holding lanterns. It was everywhere. We had invited, the royal we, had invited the nation, if you believe in this, if you believe in a better tomorrow and doing your part to form a more perfect union, put two lights in your windows. And that's what happened. The next morning, Saturday morning, and I was part of a little social media team sitting there with our laptops and our phones.
I could see you doing that too.
Right. Almost unable to go to sleep Friday night. It was so exciting. But Saturday morning came and I texted our social media manager and I said, do you have any idea what ended up as the outcome last night? She said, yes. 1.5 billion with a B, 1.5 billion people posted, shared, or tweeted hashtag 2lightsfortomorrow.
My goodness.
It wasn't just viral, it was a worldwide
Four
movement.
times the population,
Right.
5 times the population of America.
Yes.
It's just incredible. I mean, it shows that young people have a lot to learn and have a desire to know about their country, wouldn't you say?
I would. And, I encourage anyone, and you don't have to go deep, but if you go to these landscapes, Williamsburg, Jamestown, Monticello, sit at these locations.
Day trip, all of them.
Day trip, which we are so spoiled with. There are people from California who will never get to see these things. So we are so lucky. And my only request of folks is when you're on those sites is pause and be vulnerable in them. Let them speak to you. And I'm not talking some deep, hippy dippy thing. But if you give it time and give yourself time to reflect and just receive these lands, and they receive you, you'll come out of it at a deeper position. for the sins of the heirs of the past, for the hurt that's coming. You think of Antony, we think of Isabella, we think of William, the first African American child born and baptized. That happened here. We think of what freedom meant for Baker and Townsend and Mallory, who came to freedom at Fort Monroe across incredible risk to themselves. They walked those same lands. Let those lands talk to you the same way they did. And pretty soon you're part of a bigger story than yourself. And maybe just for a couple minutes, some eyes opened up.
America is always about being, even though the individual is king here, but the story is always greater than any one person, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we all come together and we make a strong, more perfect union.
Yeah.
Just by being who we are.
That's right. And, you know, and I think Scott said it early on, welcome home. And I think that's so true. It doesn't matter where you're from. When you come here and you visit these sites that Scott mentioned, and you visit all these places in Virginia, you are visiting the places where America was created. So wherever you're from, welcome home. When you're here, you're home.
Yeah. And eat our hams and our crabs and enjoy the peanuts and, you know, do the things.
And the wines.
And the wines. Do the things. Do all the things.
Yes.
They're all good. Let's end on that note. That was so, Cheryl, Scott, thank you so much for being a part of this program. My first History Through the Lens.
It's an honor. Thank you for having us.
It's an honor that you came here to speak with us today and give us your time. It was wonderful to talk about Fort Monroe and talk about Virginia 250. And I think we're going to be talking more about these two places and two entities over the next year or so. Thank you for joining me. Remember, we make history every day.